Hello everyone, I'm Fozzie, or Cam, and I'm here as always with my co-host Will. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm doing outstanding, Cam. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, and welcome to part 2 of our New Year's special ranking video, or podcast. And we also have Mike once again on the episode to help us rank. We're going to finish out our Bruce Springsteen ranking, and after that we'll move on to our MCU ranking,
It's just
which
great to be here as another co-host of the series. I've brought my Everything Podcast mug. I have that with me,
I
and
just...
just under on the merchandise section, I on the website. If you we have now the special uh, Everything Podcast spectacles that I'm just wearing now in case the fans want to order them. There's just so many things. We got like the glasses and the Everything Podcast mugs that us as the three creators and hosts of the show have created. I'm just so proud of everything that we've been able to accomplish.
Will, I mean, if you'll notice, I think our mugs look a little different than Mike's. I mean,
Yeah, I totally agree. Mike, could you hold up your mug again and compare it to me and Cam's?
a little
Yeah, it's
high.
just that I have on a color filter on Zoom right now,
Oh,
so it's
okay. It's a little
just a little
lighter.
Well,
different.
can
Okay.
you hold up your
Remember,
your
I had
mug
that.
higher and
Remember from jujitsu, I have that you know that shoulder injury.
this is ridiculous. Cam, I think
This...
it's time to get to our tier list.
I agree. All right. So, yeah, we have three Springsteen albums left to go over, uh, all of which are really good albums. So I'm thinking that we're gonna have a lot of 10 out of 10s here, and you guys can see all right.
Well, with
Oh yeah, for sure.
these Everything Podcast spectacles, I'm really seeing fantastic.
Well, that's just fantastic. So right off the bat here, we have our. I just want to recap what we have in the S tier. We have Nebraska, Darkness on the Edge of Town, Tunnel of Love, Ghost of Tom Joad, The Rising, Letter to You, Lucky Town, The River. A tier we have Magic, Born in the USA, Devils and Dust, The Seeger Sessions, uh, Wrecking Ball, and Working on a Dream. B tier we have Human Touch, and The Wild, the Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle. And in C tier, we have High Hopes. So starting this off, for our last three albums, we have Born to Run, which I think is an album that is probably his most well received by critics. I don't know if I'd say it's his most popular record. That would probably go to something like Born in the USA, or yeah, probably Born in the USA. But I think this is a close second in terms of popularity. But I think this is a better album than Born in the USA. It's a short album for sure, but there's not really a single miss. There isn't a single miss on this album. I mean, you have songs like Jungle Land that are just epic, especially when he plays when he plays it live. Oh, Born to Run has the song has gone down in history as one of, if not his most iconic songs ever. Once again, he played it at the Super Bowl, which is billions of people watching. So yeah, I think this is just an iconic record. And then you have songs like Thunder Road, which starts slow and builds into this rockin' song. It has albums. It has a bunch of great songs, and like I said, it's short, sure, but I can look past that, and I would put this in S tier. I am a huge fan of Born to Run, and I find myself re-listening to this album over and over again, just like I do with Working on a Dream, Letter to You, and Darkness on the Edge of Town. But what do you guys think about Born in the USA? Born to Run.
Yeah, I love this album, and to what you were saying, Cam, about it being only 8 songs, to me, like I don't care how many songs are on your album or EP, just as long as it's great. And boy, is this album great. Cam, you touched on how these songs have been played live over the years, and I can just name so many: Thunder Road, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, Backstreets, Born to Run, She's the One, Jungle Land, even Night, I remember from live in Barcelona being epic. Actually, the only I think kind of like totally like kind of unknown song, or at least popular song, at least for me, would be "Meeting Across the River." Not saying that it's a bad song at all, just a deep cut. But I love this album, and I love this album because these songs have just been translated into what I think are just some epic versions live. So yeah, I would say "Born in the USA," I would say, is the album that promoted Springsteen into superstardom, but I think it's albums like Born to Run that started to catapult him into stardom. So I love this album. I would also say S tier. How about you, Mike?
Just want to echo a lot of what you have both said on this album. I mean, and I Cam used the word iconic a couple times, and I think that really is the kind of, if you were to put a stamp on this album, the word iconic would be there. If someone had never heard about rock and roll music and they wanted an introduction to what that was all about, this would be the album. I remember a broadcaster radio disc jockey on WBCN rock and roll station back in Boston, Massachusetts, and there was a guy there, Ken Shelton, and he used to always say that if aliens came to this planet and they wanted to know what rock and roll was, he would play them the song Thunder Road. And so you have the epics that we've mentioned, Thunder Road, obviously the title track, Born to One, Jungleland. But then you go that next tier down, and then you're into like She's the One and Backstreets, or songs that get reinvented live, like 10th Avenue Freeze Out. There's just
Yeah.
so much to discover here. Um, I was thinking in February of 2023, when Will and I were appearing on behalf of the Everything Podcast in Portland, Oregon, at the Springsteen concert there. And that performance on that tour of Backstreets was just jaw-dropping. So clearly for me, superior album all the way
Yeah.
around.
And two things before we place it in S tier, because we all three of us have said S. But two things I wanted to say. I think this is his best album art. It's iconic. I'd put it above Born in the USA, and I really like the Born in the USA album art. That's something that's really important to me when it comes to albums. The cover, because it's what makes you really want to listen to an album. And I think most of Springsteen album art looks really good. Um, but this, I think, is probably his best cover in my opinion. It's iconic, you know. And the second thing I wanted to mention, the song "Meeting Across the River" is Billy Joel's favorite Bruce Springsteen song. I saw that in
Really?
a interview with Jimmy Kimmel. He said that, which I thought was
Wow.
interesting. Kind of an unexpected pick for a favorite Springsteen song, but I respect it for coming from Billy Joel. So yep, S tier for the album "Born to Run." Next up here, we have a more recent Springsteen album coming out in 2019, the album Western Stars, which I've actually heard people say is a country album, and I don't think it is at all. Um, I watched a Springsteen review on YouTube. I forget who posted it, but they called it a country album, which I completely disagree. There are definitely Western, obviously, Western themes in there. Um, but for me, when I first listened to this album, when it first came out, I didn't like it. And for a while, as time went on, I was still really mixed on it. And now, as I keep listening to it, I really like this album. I mean, there are very few misses on it. Um, I can find enjoyment in just about every track. And he's kind of, once again, changing up his style once again, not exactly becoming a country album, but definitely kind of taking inspiration from other country artists. Like I said, I don't think it's a country album, but you definitely have themes like that, and the stories he's telling are stories he's never really told before. And when people say all Springsteen songs sound the same and are the same, listen to Western Stars, and you'll be proven completely wrong. So I really enjoy this album just from the stories that he's telling that are so fascinating, and just the new sound he's showing off on this record. So I'd probably put this in A tier. But what do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I love this album. I always love when Bruce ventures off and does things without the Street Band, because I think sometimes his best projects can come out of non E Street Band albums. If you're talking about albums like uh, Ghost of Tom Joad, for instance. So I love whatever Bruce ventures outside the E Street Band, because I'm just so fascinated with the things he explores when he doesn't do E Street Band albums. And I remember I went and saw the Western Stars film in our local Napa theater with Mike, and I was just Bruce told the stories of all the songs before performing them in the documentary, so just to be able to hear the backstory of the songs and then be able to see him perform it was so great. So yeah, I love this album. I would go S tier. And how about you, Mike?
Well, I want to start off with Cam's comments on the album art because Cam, this is my favorite album cover
Ooh. It's
of
it's
Bruce
in
Springsteen.
it's in my top three, I think.
And I think that's almost would be a fascinating discussion, right? Which was how, it really is so many different ways you can approach album cover art, but I really found this
Totally.
one so evocative. And that's another word I would use for the music on this particular release. I thought this album was spectacular when it came out. I still find it spectacular. There's still things being revealed to me in these songs. When Springsteen goes into story song mode, I'm all in. I'm all in. And following, in the Nebraska Goes to Tom Joad, Devils and Dust tradition, you could sometimes put Tunnel Love in that category, but this is an album where Springsteen was just in a totally different musical landscape and borrowing from, pop sounds of the late 60s, early 70s, early country influences and using then his aesthetic. There's songs like, Western Stars, Chasing Wild Horses, Moonlight Motel, which are three of my favorites. This is to me elite Springsteen. And I find myself equally listening to the live album that was the soundtrack for the concert film that he recorded in the barn on his property with just a small audience. And shout out to that film. It's a real another extension of this project, just like Live in Dublin is such a critical extension of the Seeger Sessions project. This is superior all around for me. And I see it in some ways as Nebraska is a sister album to Born in the USA. I see Western Stars as a sister album to Letter to You in a lot of ways. So yeah, superior album. Love this album. There's so much to discover there.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Western Stars. I think yeah, like I said, I want to go back to the album art real quick. This is on my top three. Uh, Born to Run 1, Born in the USA 2, Western Stars 3. I think it's fantastic. And I also wanted to mention that the version he recorded in his barn is fantastic. I was really impressed with how his voice sounded live. It was fantastic. Um, but yeah, my favorite song on this one is probably There Goes My Miracle. But I've actually always felt that way. It's a fantastic song. And I think probably the reason I didn't love it so much when I came out is because I was pretty young. I was like in 5th grade when it came out. So, yeah, that probably explains my distaste for it when it came out. But now I'm a fan of it. But where do we think this belongs on the tier list?
I had it in
I
the
would go
superior
S.
category. Yeah,
All
I
right,
agree, Will.
we'll throw it in S.
I also want to say it's a great road trip album.
Oh, yeah.
Great to listen to on a road trip.
I've listened to it in the car a few times. Next up here is Bruce Springsteen's first ever album, Greetings from Asbury Park. I love this album. I don't know. I actually don't know if other people love this album as much as I do, but I just really like it. I don't think there is one bad song on the album, actually. it is so fun. He sounds so young on this album, and it's just a fantastic record. Uh, Touching on the album art one more time, I think it's fantastic. I'd probably put it in my top five for album art. I really enjoy this album. You have songs like "Spirit in the Night," which live in Dublin I think is fantastic, and just anytime he plays it live, it ends up being a really good song. And then you have songs like Mary Queen of Arkansas, Lost in the Flood, which are kind of slower and more dramatic songs, but they work perfect with this album. I love the tone of it. I love the things he's saying. I love the sound of the album. And if this is your first album and it's this good, that just tells you something about Bruce Springsteen. He's a fantastic artist and what a fantastic first album. Uh, but how do you guys feel about the first ever Bruce Springsteen album?
Yeah, as I look over the songs on here, I mean, growing up, the Springsteen on Broadway version of that song, I think is stunning. I love what he's done to Spirit in the Night live. For You is a great one. Lost in the Flood is a great song live. Mary Queen of Arkansas. What he's done to Mary Queen of Arkansas and the Angel live is pretty spectacular to me. So as I go through here, I realize how many songs I enjoy. However, though, I still feel like Greetings from Asbury Park and The Wild, the Innocent and the Street Shuffle are kind of like the prologue to his true greatness. So there are songs that I enjoy on this album, but I just don't find myself responding to it like others. So I'm gonna actually go B tier for this one. Well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna change that because as I look here, growing up, I love live. I love what he's done to Spirit in the Night live. For You, I really enjoy. I love what he's done to Lost in the Flood live. Mary Queen of Arkansas and The Angel. I've heard some great live versions of those songs. Actually, I was mistaken when I now look at the number of songs that I have grown to enjoy in the live versions of them. I take back what I said. I'm gonna actually go A. How about you, Mike?
November 2009,
Oh boy.
Buffalo, New York. The last show on the Working on a Dream tour. I was not there in person, but I purchased this album, live album, which you can purchase from Springsteen. And right now I'm just looking at the set list on Setlist FM because during that concert, 4 songs in after he did Working on a Dream, he launches into Blinded by the Light and then plays the entire Greetings album. And the songs that were a particular revelation on that performance were um, The Angel and Mary Queen of Arkansas. Obviously, growing up live gets transformed, if it's the story song version of it, into a whole other realm of experience. Sometimes when people are talking about those first 2 albums of Springsteen, between Greetings and The Wild, the Innocent, and the East Street Shuffle, I think people lean towards East Street Shuffle. I lean towards Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey. I don't know, Cam, if it resonates as high for me as it does for you, but I love that it resonates that high for you because this is an album. I mean, there are songs that have become legendary from that. And, obviously, Spirit in the Night and For You are probably the ones that he plays most live. I love when he dips into, I've heard some great live versions of Does This Bus Stop at 82nd Street? He did that actually on the Ghost to Calm Joe tour quite frequently. Have seen some killer live versions of Lost in the Flood. Love when he does Blinded by the Light on the Seeger Sessions tour. This album slots in for me in the A category. A category from Greetings from Asbury Park, New Jersey.
All right. And I actually want to make a correction. I said the song "Spirit in the Night" he played live in Dublin. It was not. It was "Blinded by the Light." Um, my bad there. But yeah, live in Dublin, that song is fantastic. But yeah, Asbury Park looks like we're going with A tier. I think that this is a very, very, very respectable tier list for sure. I am just a huge fan of Bruce Springsteen, as we all are. You know,
I'd like
I
to raise my the everything broadcast mug to our list. I think it was a great job that we all did together as the hosts of the Everything podcast and
I
creators and visionaries. It's just been great to collaborate with you guys. I'm so proud of the work we've all done together. And I once again the shout out in our merchandise section for the Everything podcast glasses, so you could wear them when you're drinking out of your Everything podcast mug, like I am right now.
I just am not 100% sure that this is official merch, but I just don't know when you're gonna learn that. You know,
You know what?
that
That's why you're so great, because we're still running it through litigation and copyright. So thank you, Cam, for that. Keep a lookout for the glasses.
great. But now it is time for our MCU ranking, and the tier list I have here has a lot of things, some of which are things we haven't all seen yet. So the things we haven't seen, we're not going to rank. Or well, actually, I guess we have a haven't watched column, but yeah, I guess we'll put it there. Um, so yeah, let's start with
Can I ask a question, Cam? Is
yeah.
this reflective of like how many years back does this go? I'm seeing TV series. I'm seeing so many different things.
It's all MCU, so Iron Man is the first one here.
Holy cow. Okay, great. I'm locked in. I'm ready to go. I'm so thankful I have my glasses on for better visuals, like read it on the screen.
All right, so here I believe we're starting off with a Marvel one shot. I have not seen this Marvel one shot. Will, have you seen this Marvel one shot?
I don't think I have. I don't think I have. So I think that's gonna have to go into the haven't watched category.
Yeah,
I would
so
like to say about Thor's hammer. It's one of my favorite one-shot
oh boy.
pieces, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, and directed by Martin Scorsese. Really well done. Um, it just seems like we're slotting a lot into this haven't watched category here. I want to
What?
talk about the many seasons of Agents of Shield that I
Oh,
watched.
I've seen this one. I've seen this one.
All Hail
You
the
know,
King.
I don't think we should do the one shots. I feel like that's just not. It isn't really. It doesn't make sense to do. They're not really movies. They're like almost like bloopers. They're just jokes, kinda. Do we agree?
Yeah, I think I agree.
All
I
right.
give it thumbs up to that.
Well, we'll throw it.
No disrespect to the one shots though.
No, no, not at all. But I just feel like we have we have a lot of things to go through here, and might as well just get the ones that we won't be able to go in depth on out of the way. So Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't hate this movie. I don't love it. Um, but I know you guys hate this movie. Or maybe not hate, but I know you guys are not very big fans of any of the Ant-Man movies, really. Um, but yeah, I don't hate this. I think it's a pretty good Marvel movie. I don't think it's all bad. It has some flaws. It's obviously not the peak of the MCU, but there are some jokes. And if you're just looking for a fun Marvel movie, I think this is a good go-to. Do I think it's as good as the first Ant-Man? No. And that reminds me, I don't think it has Quantumania on here, but that's fine. We can address that later. But yeah, I'd probably slot the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie at C tier. How do you guys feel about Ant-Man and the Wasp?
Yeah, so I think Mike and I are outliers when it comes to the Ant-Man movies. Well, I don't think anybody enjoyed Quantumania, but the first two movies, Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think Mike and I are in the minority with our non-enjoyment. But I don't find the comedy good in either film. I think characters are joking around in life-threatening situations in ways that I find non-believable. So I think a lot of MCU fans are gonna hate me right now. But Ant-Man and the Wasp, I would put in the F
Wow.
tier. How about you, Mike?
And not to be a Dennis Downer, but this is not the best category to start off with me for the MCU. I've never been a fan of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and it's jaw-dropping because I love the talent. I love Paul Rudd. I love Evangeline Lilly. Um, do you know Walter Goggins, Will, from The Justified is in there
Yep.
as well? There's just so many, Michael Douglas, Michelle Pfeiffer. So actors and artists who I have loved in other projects I could care less about in this film. I don't find the film relatable. And the thing is, even for something to be fun, to be funny, it has to make you laugh, but they want you to care about the characters and their dilemma. And I never cared about the characters. I never cared about the dilemma. I did not think it was well written. I didn't think it was well directed. And if it's not well written and well conceived, it's hard for it to be well acted. Just, you talked about a good fun movie. You want a fun Marvel movie? Go watch the Guardians of the Galaxy. They're fun. They're super fun.
Yeah.
I think they did what Marvel wanted to do in the Ant-Man series is successful in the Guardians of the Galaxy. That being said, I just think I looked up Ant-Man and the Wasp on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think it was at 87%. So when Will says that we're outliers, we very well may be, but I stand by. I'd really like to challenge people who love this film to really point to why it would be that high an approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I actually think it's just riding the MCU wave. I don't really think that if this film just came out on its own, I don't think people would care. Yeah, this is clearly, if this is there a category below F?
There's not. Well, F is 0 to a 2.9, according to this rating
Is there an F
system.
minus? If there was an F minus, I would have it in that category.
Wow, looks like we're putting Ant-Man and the Wasp to F. And just wanted to point out, because it doesn't have any movies after Love and Thunder, which I don't think is the worst thing to happen, because us on the podcast have covered pretty much every single Marvel movie individually since then, pretty much. So you guys kind of already know what our thoughts are on those. Um, but if we have time, maybe we'll just give our thoughts on the ones we haven't covered. But we might not even have time for that. Just wanted to let everyone know. But next up here, we have the first Ant-Man movie, which I don't mind at all. I think it is a fun movie. It makes me laugh. I think just a really fun spy thriller movie. Nothing too intense here. Although I was quite young when I first watched it, and I did cry when I first saw this movie. I don't even know how old I was, like 8 or something. But that did happen when I first watched the Ant-Man movie. And now, obviously, watching it now, it's no biggie. But I don't mind this movie. I think it's a fun movie. I think the actors are pretty good. Doesn't bother me. Some cool action scenes. It's cool to see Falcon in there. Anthony Mackie. So I'd probably put this in the B tier. Probably leaning more towards the 6 side than the 7.9. But yeah, I don't mind this movie at all. I think you guys will probably mind this movie, but we'll see. But Will, what are your thoughts on Ant-Man?
Yeah, so this is another one where I think Mike and I are going to be in the outlier deer, but I'm not going to spend much time talking about this one because all of the issues that I have with Ant-Man and the Wasp are the same ones that I have with this one. So I'm going to go F tier for this movie as well. How about for you, Mike?
Ant-Man for me is the crowning achievement in the trilogy, the Ant-Man trilogy, where I have Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania coming in the F minus category. I probably give Ant-Man an F without the minus because I think I liked the first maybe 5 minutes.
Oh, great.
And that's when Ant-Man, the Paul Rudd character, I think is in jail. Up till then, I thought they actually could have had an interesting movie. And but then after probably the 5 minute mark in the film, it was just the rest of it is all in the same F minus category as Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania.
Yikes. So yeah, looks like we're probably gonna put this in F tier. Um,
Well, If you say B, Cam, then I think we could even it out with a C if you say B.
No, I'm not. Well, you guys can do anything you want. I'm F minus. Well,
Well, but Mike, listen to what I'm saying. We're both in F, but Cam is in B. I was thinking about how to even it out to reflect all three of our opinions together.
I'm sorry. Yes, I need to come to the middle on this one. Thank you, Will. I just have very strong opinions. I consider these movies, they were like a waste of my life.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it was
Um,
so sad because they had such, it could have been good. The thing is, though, I've never really got into Ant-Man even as an idea of a comic book character. Well, he's an ant, but then he's huge. And they don't really explain what is so, it's just, I just don't, they don't even make it interesting. All right. Quantum Mania could have been, hold on, are we doing that one?
no, it's not on here.
Okay.
But you can
Quantum
talk
Mania
about it
could
real quick.
Quantum Mania could have been fantastic, right? Going into a whole quantum realm. That they could waste the talents of Bill Murray. And I see a Bill Murray film. I didn't even finish watching that thing. I just couldn't waste my life anymore. And I've so you know what? Deep apologies to all the people out there who love Ant-Man and the Wasp. This is just the way the series has hit me. And so if you guys want to put it in the C range, you can. But if you go on our Everything Podcast website, I think I might do a blog post and you can see I'm going to have it in the, the F category.
And while we're on the topic of Ant Man, just before our break here, I want to quickly mention the Jonathan Majors situation, which
Oh man.
is not good. Not at all. Uh, he will not be appearing in any further Marvel movies, and he's facing time in jail. But it is looking like we have some ideas of who Marvel. It looks like they're looking to recast, and we have some ideas as to who it is going to be, which I'm glad to hear. And I forget the name off the top of my head. But the person has been in a few movies like Transformers, and he played a villain in that. And I watched a few clips, and he had a pretty menacing voice. We'll see how it goes. But Jonathan Majors was great as King, but it's too bad he's a horrible person. I mean, it is what it is now, I guess. But yeah, it's too bad. But it's especially too bad for the victims. I mean, that's ridiculous. But yep, gonna move on from that and quickly maybe just get in one last film here before the break. That is Avengers: Age of Ultron. We'll probably have to go quick here. But Age of Ultron has never been one of my favorite Marvel movies. I think me and Will share a similar criticism on this one. That being, it has a lot of action scenes and not
Yeah.
a lot of just dialogue fleshing out the characters, which significantly impacts my rating for this movie. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's good, and it could have been much better, especially because the character of Ultron, as we've seen in What If, is such an interesting character. Um, so yeah, I'm probably gonna feel B tier here, leaning towards the 6 side. What do you guys' thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I don't have. I think you hit the nail on the head with all of your points there, Cam. No disagreement from me. I don't think this movie is horrible. I just think the other three are. I just think the other three Avengers movies are just on a higher pedestal, or I have them on a higher pedestal than this. So I don't think it's terrible, but I agree with you, Cam, about the B tier. So how about you, Mike?
Yeah, this definitely slots in the B tier and probably more of like the 6.5 score to 7, probably on my scale of 1 to 10. I just think it tried to do too many things and it wasn't kind of unified in its storyline. And you know what, to be honest, the biggest telling part about it is I don't remember much about it. Age of Ultron. I know it's like if I'm going to go back and watch something that's Avenger focused, is that the one I'm going to? It would be the last. Still, well crafted, and I'm sure if I went back and rewatched it tonight, there'd be elements of it that I would enjoy, but I got it in that B category.
Alright, looks like we have all put Age of Ultron in B. Works for me. All right, now we are back with Avengers Endgame, which I think is one of, but not the best Marvel movie. That's probably that's my big hot take for Marvel. I don't think Avengers Endgame is the best Marvel movie. I think it's great. It's probably top two, but it's not the best. Um, I think it's obviously an epic conclusion to an epic franchise, or epic first part of a franchise, and close to the Infinity Saga, I guess. Um, Thanos is a fantastic villain, and especially when I saw it for the first time, it went a completely different route than I was expecting it to. I mean, Thanos dies in like the first 15 minutes of the movies and of the movie, which completely unexpected. Which I appreciated them doing because I like when a movie that you think is going to be one way completely subverts your expectations. Um, I was impressed with all the performances, particularly Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Hemsworth. I thought was fantastic, and I guess everyone was great in this movie. Everyone brought their A game to Avengers Endgame. I thought it was fantastic, and just because of how legendary it is, I think it would probably go on to the S tier for me, going more towards a 9 to a 9.5. Will, how do you
Yeah,
feel?
yeah. I love this movie, and it would have stayed the highest grossing film of all time, but Avatar had I believe a China re-release in 2021 that pushed it back into the number one spot. But Avengers Endgame at the time of its release was the highest grossing film of all time. So that just shows how beloved this film is. And if you're talking films that are some of the highest that if you're talking films that are some of the highest grossing movies of all time that deserve every second of the hype and the praise, boy, is this one of them. This is the greatest superhero movie that I've ever seen in my entire life. This is my favorite Marvel movie. I don't see how you get more epic than this. It's a swan song for Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, who deliver, I think, some of their best work in this movie. And I think this movie really solidifies the fact that Iron Man and Captain America were the heart of the Infinity Saga. I think they're the two characters that it really centered around the most, along obviously with Thor. I think those were the big three, but Captain America and Iron Man, I think specifically, were the heart of the Infinity Saga. And I think Avengers Endgame at its core is a swan song for those two characters and a chance to say goodbye to them and thank them for all they've done over their time in the MCU. So this is as good as it gets when it comes to superhero movies. This is the greatest superhero movie I've ever seen in my entire life. S without question for me. How about for you, Mike?
Elite and epic. Elite, epic, clearly gets the S stamp of approval from my seat. I go back and forth. This could be my favorite MCU movie as well. It slots in number two on Rotten Tomatoes with a approval rating of 94%. And this movie is so good that I even enjoy Ant-Man in it. And not to continue my Ant-Man rant, but give good writers and good directors control of the Ant-Man character, and then the character became meaningful to me and actually moving. And so much happening, so many things around of how they worked in on such an emotional level the blip. I thought, again, like you both have said, Robert Downey Jr. is amazing in this film. Chris Evans is excellent. Everyone's good. It's such a moving, engrossing, emotional, and cumulative part of that arc of the MCU story. And, I would not necessarily be the first person who would have embraced, Marvel type movies and MCU type movies. But I know a good movie when I see one. And I'm really surprised that it wasn't nominated, or I don't believe it was nominated for Best Picture. And I don't know how much better. I mean, it's just like I was all in, all in. I remember very clearly, Will, when you and I saw it for the first time, and just blown away by it. So yeah, S, epic, elite Marvel movie, and hats off to the crowning achievement and what Robert Downey Jr. did to bring so much humor and humanity and fun to the role that he played.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's a fantastic movie. But moving on here, we have the one that comes before Infinity War, Endgame, which is Infinity War. Now this and now Infinity War and Endgame, I usually bounce back and forth with them saying which is my favorite Marvel movie. Currently, it is Infinity War, just because I recently rewatched it and it's just kind of a unique movie in that they lose, which doesn't happen very often. I think it's kind of intriguing. I think it has some of the best fight scenes, but obviously not the best fight scene, which I guess happens in Endgame. But I guess for the sake of this ranking, I will probably put it at the same exact level as Endgame. So it's gonna go S probably at the 9.5 to 9 area. So yeah, I'll just say, yeah, I'll put it tied with Endgame. I think they're both fantastic. And I think they both complement each other really well. It really is just a two-part story. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. Thanos in this, I think, is better than Thanos in Endgame. Once again, Robert Downey Jr., fantastic. I really like that they didn't focus on Captain America as much as they did in Endgame, you know? I like that they let some other characters who didn't shine as much in Endgame because they were blipped out shine in Infinity War. I thought that was awesome. So yeah, huge fan of this movie. My theater experience with this one was fantastic. But Will, what was your What are your thoughts on Avengers: Infinity War?
Yeah, I love this movie, and Infinity War and Endgame really are companion pieces. I mean, you can't separate them. Endgame is the greatest superhero movie I've ever seen. Infinity War is the second greatest superhero movie I've ever seen. It's got all the same qualities. It's epic. It's emotional. The fact that they had the Avengers lose, I think, was a great thing to do because the outcomes of all the Marvel movies tends to end on a happy note. So to be able to spice it up and try something new, I think was really smart on Marvel's part because it makes the victory against Thanos in Avengers Endgame even more satisfying, albeit, Tony Stark sacrificing his life, which was heartbreaking, obviously. But one comment I'll give on this movie: Black Widow and Captain America don't have their normal looks in this movie. They're both in their disguise looks for this film. The Black Widow's look in this movie I don't like nearly as much as her normal look, but Captain America's look in this is actually my favorite Captain America look.
I agree.
I love the beard. It's so badass. So this is
I
my
completely
favorite
agree.
Captain America look. Just badass cap in this movie. I love to see it. Love Infinity War, my second favorite superhero movie of all time. S tier. How about for you, Mike?
Well, I was late to the MCU party, so didn't see Infinity War nor Endgame when they came out in the theater, and I watched them both on back-to-back days. So sometimes it's hard to distinguish where one leaves off and the other picks up for me. Um, it would have been a bit of a hollow feeling with the loss, right? And having to wait for the next film to come out. But I think I would have appreciated it. And as Cam talked about subverting expectations, I'll agree with you all about the badass look of Captain America in this film. There was a summary of one review that says about Infinity War that Infinity War ably juggles a dizzying array of MCU heroes in the fight against their gravest threat yet, and the result is a thrilling, emotionally resonant blockbuster that realizes its gargantuan ambitions. And that's what I give to the Russo brothers. What they're able to pull off is epic in scale, and they're going for a very, very high bar. They're not necessarily believing that less is more. They bring in everything in the kitchen sink and they pull it off. Um, and so, yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed the ride and the journey. And it's, so many films that are in this kind of genre can fall into the category of predictable. That was not the case with Infinity War, nor its successor, the End Game. You didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know how it was
Yeah.
going to unfold. Grave sacrifices, with the Black Widow in particular, occur. It's stunningly moving, and yeah, I think this one also falls into the superior category for me.
Yeah, looks like Infinity War is also going in S tier. So now I just want to make a quick comment on the Captain America appearance. You take bearded Captain America with that kind of disheveled, more beat up looking suit, and give him his regular shield. That's prime Captain America, in my opinion. I think they should have gone with that. Maybe not the suit the whole time, but the beard. That should have been what they went with the whole time. But anyway, moving on from that, we have Black Panther, which was one of the movies that got me really, really, really into Marvel. I thought it was a fantastic movie with fantastic performances from everyone. Chadwick Boseman, obviously, he's passed away now, rest in peace. I think he's fantastic in this. I think Michael B. Jordan, as we all know, we're all big Michael B. Jordan fans on this podcast. I think he's fantastic in this movie, just like how he's fantastic in the third Creed movie. But did you just, Mike? Did you just acknowledge the third? I believe you just shook your head, showing that you acknowledged the third Creed movie's existence.
What? What?
I tried.
What are you talking about?
Never mind. I tried my best, Will.
You did.
But anyway,
You did.
the performances here were fantastic. I think Shuri is hilarious in this movie. I think I think the most underutilized character in the Black Panther series so far has been Nakia. I think she has so much potential, and she's not in the movies enough. I mean, she's good in the scenes she's in, but she could be so much more. Um, but yeah, I think they could have dove deeper into Black Panther and her relationship together. That would have been interesting. But I get it. They didn't really have time for that. They wanted to get straight into it, which I completely get. Claw in this movie, Ulysses Claw, is fantastic. Andy Serkis is such an incredible actor. Gollum, Snoke, Ulysses Claw. I mean, come on. And one of the apes in Planet of the Apes. So that's pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. Um, so yeah, I would probably end up putting the first Black Panther movie in A tier. Great performances, great action, a lot of really cool moments, and a lot of the most significant moments in Marvel history come from this movie. So yeah, Will, what are your thoughts on Black Panther?
Yeah, I believe this was the first Marvel movie to be nominated for Best Picture. I feel like with these superhero movies, sometimes they can get hate because I think some critics are just tired of Marvel movies, taking away time for other films from back in the day.
Such a ridiculous criticism.
Well, but let's take a film like The Holdovers, for instance, that came out this year. That I don't think like a film like that. I don't think is going to be acknowledged and do well at the box office nearly as much as back in the day, because superhero movies are the types of movies that people see in the theaters these days. But this is I would say one that this is one that I feel the critics really did love. I think it's a groundbreaking Marvel movie. I do have to touch on that. I think when you point to the racism and the sexism that has existed in this country over the years, one thing that I would like to point to is the first MCU movie was 2008 with Iron Man, and I think that we didn't have. I think the fact that we didn't have a Marvel movie with a person of color in the lead until 2018 10 years into the MCU's existence, and the fact that we didn't have an MCU movie with a female in the lead until 2019, 11 years into the MCU's existence, that is disturbing to me. I don't appreciate that. So I just think better late than never with this film, with finally having a person of color in the lead. A groundbreaking film. Sometimes I feel like sometimes I think you can feel like superhero movies are like are being controlled by like the company, for instance, like the Marvel company, but this very much feels like a Ryan Coogler film. It's like
Yeah.
it feels like his movie, I would say, more than a Marvel movie. So groundbreaking. I would say one of the rare Marvel movies that I would say the majority of the critics love, and finally a person of color as the lead of a Marvel film. It was boy was it about time. So groundbreaking film. I'm gonna say just yeah. I'm gonna say S tier. I think it was just a groundbreaking Marvel achievement. How about for you, Mike?
Yeah, wow. Black Panther, and I'm a huge fan of Ryan Coogler and the things he does as a director, as a producer, other things that he's brought to the screen, and really kind of reinvented and reinvigorated in some ways what you thought was possible with a superhero film. And so I marvel at the movie from an artistic lens, what very deserving of being nominated for Best Picture. And you guys have already commented on so many of the strengths that are here, but you're seeing an artistic visionary operating at a very high level with this film. And and the performances are fantastic. And there's not much I could, sometimes you'll watch a movie and you'll kind of, there'll be some part of it that might be like, well, they could have tweaked that, or this performance wasn't that strong, or there was one part that I can't think of anything in this film that I would go back and do differently. This is Ryan Coogler and Chadwick Boseman, and really in partnership, I think, on their vision for this particular piece. And there's so many strong performances, and so just this is full on S for me.
Already. Now, I actually think Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a better movie than the first Black Panther movie. Do you think that's a hot take, or do you think that's a reasonable
Yeah,
take?
I mean, I'm not sure what the general consensus is around that. So, like, I mean, I think both films were reviewed positively. So, whether I would call it a hot take or not would have to be based on like what other people think. I would have to look more into that. But I personally think they're equally as good. There's not one that I would say is better than the other, but I'm willing to I would personally say that they're equally as good. But I'm fine listening to arguments for why either is the better movie because I love both films. But I personally would say that they're equal.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I love both. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine putting this in S tier. Works for me.
I
But
want to give
next,
a shout out to the podcast that came out, the companion piece with Tanashi Coates as the host.
Oh,
That's the kind of the behind the scenes and looking at the film, particularly Wakanda Forever, from really a historical, socio-political perspective, and diving in deep to things like the art direction, and how meticulous they were in capturing the African American and Mesoamerican cultures and storylines. And it was just a riveting podcast that kind of opens up so many other ways to approach these films. I think you could make an argument. I think I could hear someone making an argument for Wakanda Forever being the better of the two. But in some ways, to me, they're so tightly, they're seamless going between the two stories. So it's hard sometimes for me to pick one over the other. I do know that Black Panther comes out number one in terms of the Rotten Tomatoes rating.
wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. I can see that. I wouldn't put it above Infinity War or Endgame, but it's probably in my top five, maybe. Well, that's for another day. Um, But up next, we have another groundbreak. Well, actually, not really. We'll get to that after. But a movie that should have came out a long time ago, and I think it should have had a different story. But the story we got, I will take. I really enjoyed this movie. I think ScarJo was fantastic in this one. I think Florence Pugh is a fantastic actress, and I cannot wait to see her in more things. I've already seen her in more things, like films like Don't Worry, Darling, and she was in the Hawkeye show, which she both of which she was great in. David Harbour in this movie is fantastic. All the performances are great. Standout for me is the action. I think it's some of the best action we've gotten from the MCU in a while. And the main thing is that this movie is overhated. Why do so many people hate on this movie? The only reason I could find myself not liking it is because it could have been a different story, and it which but I'm like I said, I'm fine with the story we got, and it shouldn't have came out in 2020, but I'm glad that it exists. Uh, I'd put it in A tier. Well, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love this movie. I agree that it's a little that it's a little bewildering that it didn't come out until a couple years ago. You would think
Yeah,
that Black Widow would have gotten a solo movie sometime throughout the Infinity Saga, but oh no, not until the Multiverse Saga does a solo Black Widow movie come out. Surprising, but I loved the results. I thought it was an incredibly character driven film, which is what I look for in a great superhero movie. So really, nothing more I could have asked for from a Black Widow origin story film. So I loved it. I think I would go S. How about for you, Mike?
Black Widow is the most underrated film in the MCU catalog, in
I
my opinion.
agree.
I don't I don't know what people are thinking. I don't know if they're just hating on a female lead. Um, it's just, I mean, the timing of when it came out during the pandemic made the release, harder, right, to do to generate the kind of revenue, and it's still hard to sometimes capture how you're assessing box office when things go quicker to streaming. But put all that aside, I thought it was, and Will, I agree with you. I actually thought this was a character-driven story. Cameron, I agree with you of how much Florence Pugh adds to it and the relationship between Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh as playing out their characters and their sisterhood and their story. I thought there were actually some very strong feminist themes that I enjoyed that didn't feel forced in this film. I thought the action was outstanding. And so I thought this film was working on all levels. When I look at the ones, well, what did you end up giving it?
I said S.
Yeah, I think I have it in that S for and I'm rating sometimes these movies in like, okay, how do I rate them against each other? If I was gonna go against all films, it might be A, but I think I'm leaning towards an S for Black Widow, phenomenally underrated. I think Scarlett Johansson is a powerhouse of
Agreed.
an actor.
Especially in Asteroid City. She's fantastic in that one.
She is fantastic in Asteroid City. I recently watched the Noah Baumbach film Marriage Story with her and Adam Driver, and she is phenomenal in that. She's just great in everything that I see her in.
Also, you know what I just learned? I learned that because I know Greta and Noah work together all the time. I had no clue they were married until the other day when I listened to I think it was some interview with Greta that she just did. I had no clue about that. But now that I know it, that makes more sense, and I'm glad I know that now. I also listened
Yeah,
to I listened to the Barbie. I watched the director's commentary of Barbie. Fascinating.
don't get me started on Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig. I had a big dive into both of their films this year, and so I'm just so impressed with them.
Yeah. Definitely. But anyway, we got a little sidetracked there. But we have Avengers 2.5, Captain
Yes,
America
absolutely,
Civil
Cam.
War.
Absolutely.
Why wasn't this called an Avengers movie? I don't know. I guess it's kind of focused on what's going on with old Stevie Rogers over there. But, it's fine. I think it's an epic Marvel movie. Definitely one of the best in recent memory. Do I think it's S tier? No. I think there are better Marvel movies. I mean, what can I say? It's not even close to being on the same tier as Endgame or Black Widow or any of those movies. I mean, I wouldn't put it near them, but I think it's a bad movie? No way! RDJ is fantastic in this one. I think it's a really good movie. I it was Spider-Man's introduction to the MCU, which was epic. I mean, what the Winter Soldier finally becomes a real character in this one, and not just a mindless robot whose one purpose is to kill. So I was really happy to see that. Introduces the Black Panther as well, also really exciting. So yeah, I'd probably once again put this movie in the A tier. Love it.
Yeah, I love this movie too, and like I'm gonna compare this to Avengers: Infinity War in that, it's like Infinity War is hard to watch because they lose in the end, and Civil War is hard to watch because the Avengers fight, and that's not something that you want to see happen. But putting aside that being painful to watch from a quality standpoint, I thought this movie was exceptional. And, the Avengers having a Civil War, I mean, that's not Thanos, blipping half the universe epic, but that's one of the more epic events that has happened in the MCU. I think for sure. So it's tough to watch because you don't want to see them fight each other, but in terms of quality, I think it's as good as it gets in the MCU. So I would actually go S tier. I think it's a great Marvel movie. How about for you, Mike?
Captain America, Civil War, B.
Wow.
I know I'm a little different in how I take about that, and so um, I'm not always a fan of pitting like my favorite characters against each other. And so when it's building towards the epic battle, um, I was really conflicted, and maybe that's what they wanted me to be as a viewer. But I didn't necessarily buy the battle. It did just didn't feel real to me when they were competing against each other. And because it's building to culminate in that moment, um, I think that's the biggest part that holds it back. Though I love the pieces with Spider-Man and Captain America and their whole meeting. Yeah, absolutely. But there were parts of this from a story element that I wasn't buying into like I have with other things within the MCU series. So it slots in the B category for me. And once again, very underwhelming Ant-Man in this film.
All right. Where do we think this one goes? This was
If you
also
say,
Russo brothers,
yeah,
by the way. So
yes,
they must have changed something up for Endgame.
yeah, I have so much respect for what the Russo brothers have done in the MCU. But if I have S, Cam has A, and Mike has B, I would say A evens it out, Cam.
All right, works for me. All right, next up here we have Captain America: The First Avenger. Fantastic movie, super fun. I don't think it's a great movie by any means. I've had a lot of changing opinions on this one. Sometimes I think it's awesome, sometimes I'm thinking it's not awesome. It all depends. Right now, in this moment, I am feeling B tier. I think there are a lot of really cool action scenes. I think the relationship in this one between Steve and Bucky is fantastic. I think Peggy is a fantastic character, and Tommy Lee Jones in this movie was a very random character a very random big star to have in a movie, but I appreciate it. I love Tommy Lee Jones. I enjoy this movie. I don't go back to it all that much like I do for a lot of a lot of other Marvel movies. Still, doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I'm feeling a B tier, leaning towards a 7.5 to a 7, kind of. Will, how do you feel?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Cam. I think you made some great points there. I would agree. I would also go B tier, just like just like Avengers: Age of Ultron. I don't think it's bad at all. I just wouldn't. I just don't enjoy it to the same extent as the other two Captain America movies. So I definitely think it's better than Ant-Man and the Wasp. But ultimately, um, just like how I'd say that I don't think Age of Ultron is bad, I just don't have it on the tier of the other three Avengers movies. Captain America: The First Avenger, I also don't think it's bad. I just don't have on the tier of the other two Captain America movies. So I'm in total agreement with you, Cam. I would go B as well. How about for you, Mike?
Captain America, First Avenger, C.
I knew it. I just knew
Wow.
it. For some reason, your voice tone just made me have a feeling, Mike.
Well, I just wasn't really into this origin story. I thought some of the CGI didn't work. I didn't like the
Ah,
look of Chris Evans' body a lot in the beginning. I wasn't buying it when he supposedly like the skinny guy, and so there's a lot of parts in this where I wasn't just interested. It didn't grab me as a viewer. It feel like it there was an origin story, but it didn't bring me anything new for me to sink my teeth into in terms of its narrative. It felt a little cliched at times too. I later grew to really appreciate Chris Evans' performance when we get to Winter Soldier. I'm a big fan of that movie, so it's not like that I'm anti-Captain America, but this was not one that really lit a fire under me. And if you look at the range of 3.5 to 5.9, it'd be closer to that 5.9. I didn't want to give it to B because I could probably would rate it as a 6, but I'm like, I don't want to seem that it's in the range of 6 to 7.9. So I giving this a C.
all right. So me and Will both say B, so I think it'll go in the B tier. But yeah, that works. Last one for this episode today, and we're gonna have to do a part three, which might have to be the final part, and we might have to. I think we significantly overestimated or underestimated how much time it would take us to do these rankings. But anyway, let's speed this one up so we can finish this up here. So right here we have my. It's probably in my top three favorite MCU movies of all time. I love the Winter Soldier. It is a fantastic movie. All the characters are great. The Winter Soldier is a badass. It is a fantastic movie. I love Falcon getting introduced in this one. I love the relationship between ScarJo and Chris Evans, or Steve Rogers, and the Black Widow. I think that's fantastic and something we haven't seen a whole lot, at least this fleshed out in the MCU. I just think it's a fantastic movie. S tier. The action is phenomenal. The direction from the Russo brothers is fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you, Cam. And look, if Black Widow wasn't going to get a solo film until 2021, at least she could have a movie where she was the definitive co-star. So I love that aspect of this movie. I totally agree with you about the S. Love this film. I could talk about this film in two different ways. If you're asking me if you consider Civil War a Captain America movie, I would tie it with Civil War. If you consider Civil War an Avengers movie, then I would say this is my favorite Captain America film. So I think you can look at it two different, or I could look at it two different ways depending on if you think Civil War is a Captain America movie or an Avengers movie. But yeah, I love Winter Soldier great film. I agree about the S tier. How about for you, Mike?
Love this film. Love this film, and it's kind of unique, I think, in the MCU universe and the type of story that it did, because it was really harkening back to some like almost political thrillers of the 1970s. I
Yeah.
love that Robert Redford is in it because he was in a movie 3 Days of the Condor, and it had similar themes and tones to that film. Robert Redford is fantastic in this. Love the relationship between Scarlett Johansson and Chris Evans. I love the whole thing about Chris Evans, you know, trying to adapt to this time period. Remember when he'd keep the little notebook and he'd write things down of things because, he was from a different era, and now he's plopped down here, and now he has to recalibrate. I think it's very a character-driven story. I loved the Winter Soldier as a nemesis, and how they, and then how they worked that piece in there. There's so much that's done well within this film, and it's not necessarily CGI on the front burner. It's story and narrative and intrigue on the front burner. So I can definitely put Winter Soldier into the superior category.
Yeah. And that about wraps up this episode of the Everything Podcast. Mike and Will, thanks for joining me as always. I have a feeling you'll be kicked out of this call in a second. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the Everything
And thanks
Podcast.
everybody for coming to our podcast. For me, Cam, and Will, I just want to thank everyone for being there. And what a thrill it is for the three of us to offer this podcast to you. And that's why we all have it.
Yeah, maybe it's a good thing he got kicked off. Am I right? Um, but yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the Everything Podcast. Will and Mike, like I said, well, mostly Will. Thank you for joining me. And Mike, I'm still not sure if that is an official Everything Podcast mug, but that might have to be discussed further in the third part of our ranking series. But really, I hope you guys have enjoyed these ranking videos. It is all part of our New Year's special. And after this third part, that'll wrap that up. And then you guys will have to look forward to next New Year's. But we have a bunch of big things planned. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Mike and Will, thanks for joining me. And see you guys.